Hi everybody, welcome to the Profoto webinar. My name is Jared Platt. Glad to have you. Welcome to the studio. We are going to be talking about real weddings today, real weddings and sessions. We're going to take you behind the scenes. Some of the times we're going to be showing you video from those scenes, and sometimes we're going to be showing you setup shots so that you can see where things are, and we'll just be dealing with still images. But we're going to show you how we lit all of the different lighting situations that we go through. So I wanted you to be able to kind of get behind the scenes and see what happens on a real wedding as opposed to a photo shoot. I think real weddings kind of have their own flair. There's a lot of stress, there's a lot of movement going on, and so I wanted you to see how we deal with those types of things on location. How we actually are lighting, what tools we're using. These are some of the tools we're using during our shots that we're going to show you. These are my favorites. These are the ones that I'm using all the time because they're light, they're easy to travel with, to move around, and easy to set up. So that's what we're going to do. If you would like to join in on the conversation and ask questions, and this would be a really great webinar for questions, please, down at on the right-hand side of your screen there, you'll see a chat window, and you can certainly ask questions. And then we have the folks in Sweden who are taking those questions, and they are relaying them to me, as well as if you ask some real technical question, they can sometimes answer. They can answer those as well, very specific things that maybe I don't even have the answers to. So please chat, ask questions, and we will answer them as much as we can and as quickly as we can. All right, so we're on real weddings, and the first shot that I have to show you is on the computer now, so if we can go to that. This is a shot that was during the portrait session at a wedding, so we were just starting to set up the portrait lighting, and we hadn't actually set up any of the lights yet. So this is a perfectly lit shot from just the ambient light. But the important thing is that I could have made it even better, but I would have missed the shot. And so as we start this discussion, the most important thing that I can mention is that the moment is far more important than the actual light when it comes to a wedding. And so if you're in a position where you can get a moment, don't fuss with the light, get the moment. When you have the time to get the light, that's when you get the light. So it's just important that we all understand that moments are very important to wedding photographers. And so it's nice to be able to get light very quickly, but in some instances, your light's not ready, just wait and get the shot. And so that was really important. Okay, we're going to first go into a video, and we're going to show you a video of some portraits that we did on the Grand Canyon, and you'll just get a sense of where we are and what we're doing, and then we'll discuss some of those. So let's roll the video first, give you a sense of where we are in space and how we deal with the client and work with the client. So let's go. All right, first shot. It's going to be right here on this platform, and we're looking out that way, okay? Let's put that right here, and then bring it down a little bit. It's probably a little too high. Okay, this is a real wide shot of the whole scene, and so I want you guys to, can you hold her like this? Put your arm around her waist. Put it under her other arm, though. Okay, now when I tell you 3, 2, 1, you're going to look at me. 3, 2, 1, now. That's it. That's what I want right there. Absolutely beautiful. Let's see. All right, so I just want to get a portrait of Eva. Okay, here we go. And Alex, hop off. 3, 2, 1, here we go. Love it. Don't go too far, Alex. Okay, all right, your turn. All right, you're going to be right here. There you go. And I want you to just put hands in the pockets, just like that. All right, Eric, I need you right here. Perfect. Yeah, just like that. Okay, here we go. That's perfect. All right, here we go. Eric, you can come a little bit closer this way. Kind of hug into him, like you're warming up. No. On his arm. You gotta stay on his arm so I can see you. There, yeah, just like that. Okay, so you could hear that that wind in there. And so Eric had to hold on. So he was using this softbox right here. This is kind of a medium-sized softbox, 2x3. He's holding that because the wind will just totally take that off the canyon wall. That wind was decently strong, so we had to make sure that we had sandbags on all of our equipment. But the important thing on those, and we're going to kind of cycle through those shots now so I can describe what was going on. That first shot is we're lighting with multiple lights here. And when you saw the lights in the scene, and let's just diagram this really quickly, the point of that cliff kind of comes out at an angle like this, and then there's a little. So we're looking top down, and then we've got our bride and groom right here. They're doing this kind of a thing here, and they're looking towards each other. So I'm here with the camera right here. And then I've got a softbox here, and then I've got a light over here and a light over here. So it's hard. I would like to have a light here, and there's no sun. I would love to have a light coming this way to give them a little bit of a rim light, but I don't have that option. So what I'm attempting to do is I'm attempting to put a light here as far around them as possible to try and get a little side lighting, a little cross lighting here, and kind of separate them out a little bit. And then this actually comes out a little bit more like this. And I'm trying to get a light as far out over here as I can to come around in this way and just kind of rim light there. And then the softbox is what's giving them the main light, kind of filling in their faces and things like that. So that's the concept behind what we're doing. But then when we move to another shot, like for instance the shot of Eva there on that outcropping of rocks there, what we are doing is we're changing the lighting situation, because at this point now I'm over here, right here. I'm shooting from here, and I'm shooting over this way. Eva's over here, looking off this way. And so at that point now I have the ability to put a light over here and give her a little bit more of a cross light, and then fill her in just a little bit with a softbox here. You did notice, though, as this softbox has kind of remained over here on this side of them for the moment, because they were always out here. But as soon as we put, I'm going to go to red now so that we can actually see my marks. As soon as we put the groom over on this outcropping of rocks, and I'm over here with the camera, at that point, the softbox was on this side, and then we had one of these hard lights right here, a bare head coming this way. And that wouldn't have worked, because then we would have had the harsh light coming forward lighting him, and we would have had the cross light or the side light. That would have been a nice soft softbox. So that wouldn't have been a smart decision. So what we did is when I said, Eric, I need you over here, Eric brings over here and lights him here with the softbox, and then we take the hard light and put it over here so that it gives him a little bit of a rim light. So if you look at his shot now, you can see, and he's wearing kind of a shimmery white suit, and so when you use a lot of light like this, it creates some really beautiful shimmering nature to his coat and it just shimmers. But very, very interesting, cool style. So, but you can see right here on his head, you can see that cross light happening right there. That light is coming from that hard light that's over here, kind of behind him. And then you have a softbox, which is giving him that soft light here. Without it, he would be fairly dark. Because look at this. This whole scene is a really fairly dark scene. In fact, we have no real sun going on here, so it's a nice soft situation. And we're trying to create that direction of light. I'm trying to make it look like there's some kind of sun coming through these clouds. But really, the only sun that you've got is over here on the left-hand side, just barely creeping through those clouds. So that's why we bring the hard light over here to kind of mimic what that sun might be doing if it was coming through those clouds. Okay, so let's go on to another shot here. This time we're going to, it's another shot on the canyon. Why don't you go to the computer and let me show you, it's the same kind of situation, kind of a darker situation, different group, different bride and groom. And I'm going to show you some shots and show you where the photos are. For instance, in this case, they're still on this outcropping of rocks. So go back to this diagram here. They are sitting right here on this, or standing on this outcropping of rocks, and I'm shooting back towards them. So when I am there, what I'm doing is I've got another, in this case, I've got a hard light here, and then I've got another hard light. Now this was, it was a very windy day here, very windy. And so instead of a softbox, we have all hard light. So the softbox, when you're using a softbox, you've got a very large light source. And so that large light source is kind of coming from all sorts of different directions. It's coming from over here, it's coming from over here, and infinitely in between. And that allows for all the shadows to be soft. Even if it gets a little bit of a nose shadow coming across here, it's a soft, it kind of falls off because you've got an infinite number of points of light hitting it and filling in its own shadow. However, with a hard light like this, if you literally just take an entire, just a hard light like this, it's bigger than a speed light, but it's still kind of a small bulb, and so it's going to create a much harsher light source. But sometimes when you can't put something like this on a cliff edge because the wind is too windy, then I can't let this blow off the edge. At that point, just some sandbags and a hard light like this, just a bare head, will do the trick. And so I wanted to show you the two different options. So in the first, we were using a softbox. It gave us a really nice soft look. But look at the difference then when you come into the same general situation, but with two bare heads. If you look at that, it's a little bit more, there's a little bit more highlights there. You can see a little bit more specular highlights in his face and his cheek, a little bit more, shine and things like that. But in the end, it's still a very beautiful shot, but it's a little bit more punchy. It's just a harder light source. But we're doing the same thing with it. So let me show you this. So there they are on that outcropping of rock, and here I am, and then this light is the fill. This is what would have the softbox on it. And then on the back side of them, right over here, and I'm going to see if I can find I don't think I have a shot where it shows us, but basically right behind her, where this shot is being taken from, this is the actual position of the second light, which is the rim light, which is kind of giving him that separation. And so when you look at them, you can see that rim light's coming and separating her out from the canyon. It's also giving her a nice crest of light here on her hair. It's giving him a crest of light here. But then that catch light in their eyes is coming from that bare head that's kind of off to my right. All right. So we also did a couple other shots. So in this case, we were able to, because we turned around. So now let me sketch this one out for you here. So we're on, now I'm over here, right where this light is. So this is now my position over here. Here's the camera position. I've got them on this set of rocks here, and then that light is now over here on this set of rocks, which allows me to actually give them a nice light from behind. So now I've just reversed the positions. I've got a light over here, and I've got a light over here. This light is coming from behind, this light is coming forward. Both bear heads, but I would prefer to always get that light as much behind them as possible. And so this is the shot that you get as a result of that. And I love the way the light, see how the light creeps in and it rim lights her nose. It even sneaks past her nose and hits her cheek just a little bit. All of that is due to that backlight. So that backlight does a really good job. And then we're filling in with our other light, which is just off to the right here, right of the camera, and it's coming in and just filling them in where we need some light. So that's another setup. I always want my light to be as far behind them as possible. And sometimes that light can't go any further because it's a cliff, and sometimes it can't go any further because it'll be in the shot, and maybe you don't want it in the shot. Here's another example of the same concept. We've got the light coming from behind them and one coming to the front. Now, this is kind of an important point, though, to be made. Let me go to another. Okay, so here's the situation that I had in working with the portrait. So I'm taking portraits of them, but I'm doing all of this so far has been in TTL. And usually in TTL, and it changes and varies, but usually my setup for TTL, the backlight, whatever the backlight is, that's going to be plus 1 to 2 stops over the main light. So the main light, whatever, if it's a softbox or if it doesn't matter what it is, but the main light is going to be either equal, so normal. For TTL, it's going to always be at 0, and then you can plus or minus it. So it's always going to be the normal light. Sometimes, depending on what's fooling the TTL metering, it might be a stop, a third or a 2/3 a stop over or under normal. But then the backlight's always going to be 1 to 2 stops more than the main light. So we always want our rear light to be stronger than our main light. So in this circumstance here, then I've got 2 bare heads set up on either side of them. One is the rim light, and one is the fill light in the front. But look what happens then when we stop doing portraits and they're just doing other things. The fact that I'm in TTL and they're moving around, the lights are still engaged. And because they're on TTL, even if they're moving away from the camera, and so they've moved away from the camera, they've kind of gone up a little ways, and because the lights are still in their direction, it gets a proper exposure, and it still gives me that beautiful rim light. It still gives me all of the same characteristics of the light, even if they've changed positions quite a bit. This can be really useful when people are moving around. If someone's walking towards you, if someone's, like for instance, if you're on a photo shoot and you're asking someone to come towards you, follow you, but you don't have an assistant with you to move the light, you can just set the light here and then let them come towards you, and the TTL is going to constantly lower that light until they get right next to it. And then maybe it'll blow them out because it's too strong or whatever. But as you come closer, it's lowering the power of the light because it's reflecting off of them, and they're the main source. They're the main reflection. So that's very useful. In fact, next month we're going to actually be on location with some model shoots that we did in Spain, and you'll see those kind of things happening, where people are walking and moving, and the TTL will capture that. Here's another circumstance where the TTL helps a lot. So in this case, we're getting ready, and I'm able to simply put the flashes out in the corner of the room, and that flash is literally filling up the room with light. But because we're on TTL, if I happen to be focusing on someone further away in the room, I'm able to get really beautiful light off of that. Okay? So the TTL is very useful, not just for portrait situations, but in moving around and capturing light in different locations. We're going to go to some questions now and see if we have any here. Do you always light on location, or do you shoot ambient only at times? Absolutely, I shoot a lot of ambient. In fact, at the very first, I showed you that shot where the girl was laughing and she had thrown up the flowers. That's completely an ambient shot. Most of what I do is ambient. The only time I'm using flashes is when I either need to light up a church, or I need to light up a room, or I'm doing portraits where I need to really, finesse the light. So I prefer to use ambient on all of my documentary work. But even when you're doing documentary work, if you have that one of these heads lighting up a room, and it's very easy to bring one of these heads into a room and just park it, pop it on the ceiling, pop it off a wall, and it will just light the whole room. Now you can do that with a speed light as well. So you can do it with a lot of different lights. This just happens to be 10 times more powerful than a speed light, so I can really light up a room to even match a exterior light that's coming through the window if I want to. Okay, let's see. How do you balance the ambient with the flash? Good question. Okay, that's actually a really excellent question. So I'm going to go back to that shot that I was just using here, and let's do this one. So in this case, I wanted a really dark, brooding shot, and then I wanted to light the subject. So the first thing I do is I go in and I always meter my ambient light. And I take a picture and I see, what does the ambient light look like? How dark do I want the clouds? How light do I want them to look at? What kind of light do I want from the existing light? So that's the first metering situation. In this case, this was at ISO 200, 200th of a second at 5.6. And that gives me the dark brooding clouds, it gives me the dark canyon, it gives me a little nice light coming through the clouds. So it's perfect exposure for the sunset, but now I need to just light them. At that point, I fire up the B1s, and I allow the TTL to do the first work. So the TTL does the first job at trying to manage the light. I fire off a shot. Usually it gets it pretty right. Sometimes it's fooled by a dark exposure or a light exposure, sun hitting it or something like that, but most of the time it's pretty close. And at that point, I just finesse it a little bit. Usually when I'm dealing with something like this and I have a backlight and a main light, then I'm going to increase the backlight. And the way you do that is simply by taking your remote, and once you have two different lights, let's call this main light A and the backlight B. So if the main light is A on group A, we would just keep it at its TTL normal setting, so it's at 0. And then I would go to group B, which is going to be our backlight, and at that point I would energy that up 2 stops, or maybe a stop and a half. And once I've done that, then from here on out, the A group, or the main light, is going to stay at whatever TTL suggests, and then the backlight, or the B group, is going to power up by 1.5 stops. Once I've got that ratio all set up and I like what I've got in the ratio, then all I need to do is power up and down the flashes based on the camera. So inside the camera flash compensation settings, in the camera itself, that's where I'll dial that up and down. Once I've got what I like and I like the way the light looks, then when you shift around, sometimes that will change the exposure, and so that's when you go back into your remote, your air remote, and you're going to take it from TTL. You're going to push this little button. Once it hits manual, then none of those settings will change. No matter how you recompose the shot, the flashes will always fire at that solution that you had, and then the light will stay exactly the way it's supposed to be. So that's how we deal with that. Now, in balancing, so if you want your light to look as much like it was naturally lit as possible, then you're really trying to balance the light. And so we're going to go to a quick shot here. Hang on one second, let me find it. There we are. So we're going to go to a quick shot here of a couple. This is an engagement shot, and they are way, way back in the back. And the sun is really harsh. Even though there's clouds behind them, the sun is pretty harsh on top of us. And it's really giving them a lot of harsh shadows. So let me zoom in here. You can see that there's a lot of harsh light there. if we hadn't lit them, their faces would be very, very dark because there's just so much harsh light. So what we've done is we've taken a bare head and we pointed it directly at them, and just off camera there is pretty much put the bare head as close as we could off camera and just filled in all of their shadows with a bare head. And you can see, there we go, you can see this happening right now. So see how the bare head is just right as close to them as it can possibly be. I'm a long way away from them, shooting with a 200 millimeter lens to get this shot. And Eric is over there holding that light, and generally in the same location as the sun, but just wrapped around a little bit. So let's actually diagram that for a second. If you are in a position where you have really harsh light and all you have is a monopod and a bare head B1 with you, then what you're going to do, so here's my camera right here, and here's the couple right there, and the sun is like right off of, I'd say it's right about like here somewhere. Sun is somewhere up here, barreling down and creating really harsh shadows. So its light is like a little tiny pin light. The sun is tiny. And so all of its shadows are really harsh because it's so small. And it's just barreling down on them right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your bare head B1 and you're going to get as close as possible to them because you want it to be as big a light source as possible. And even when you take a little source, a little light about this size, if you move it closer, so if I take this light and I move it closer to that, see how big it is now? It's huge. Now it's a really big light. So as I increase or decrease the distance to the subject, my light gets bigger. So I want it to be as close to my subject as possible without actually being in the frame. I also want it to be as far over this way as I can without being in the frame. So if I can put my B1 right here, so that's my light, then what happens is whatever shadows are created by the sun, this light is filling those shadows in as much as possible. But it is not creating a completely different competing set of shadows from over here. A lot of people, if the light's coming from over here, they'll come over on this side and try and fill it in from this side. And the problem with that concept is that then you have shadows going this way and shadows going this way, and it gets all messed up and you've got different competing shadows. It doesn't look real. So I want this light to come in from this side so that it's just finishing the light coming from the sun. It looks like it's wrapping around a little further. What you're really trying to do is make the sun look like it's a bigger light source by extending its reach beyond here. And that helps to fill in those shadows so that we can see their faces and we can feel that, you know, but it still seems bright, seems like bright sunlight, but I can see inside of this shadow, inside of that shadow. I can see inside of this shadow because I'm just filling them in just a little bit. But the direction of light stays the same. So that's a really good question. Let me answer one more question here, and then we'll move on. So one of the questions is about the safety of the bride. So yeah, I get that question a lot when I'm working on the canyon. So as close as they are to the canyon edge, are you not worried about their safety? And not really. There have been times where we've had gale force winds, like 51-mile-an-hour winds. At that point, we shoot them a little further away from there so that if they were literally to blow and lose their step, they're not going to fall off into the canyon. But we're very safety conscious. No one moves, not the bride or the groom, without somebody holding them and putting them into position. So it's very important that you're safety conscious when you're doing this. So even when, you can see me there. So I'm holding the bride and I'm moving her into position. And then when I leave, the groom is going to hold her arm until I'm ready, and then he's going to let go of her arm. But also, it's important to note that as amazingly scary as that looks, it's actually this. So you can see that it kind of trails off. Yeah, it's a long way down, but if she were to fall off this rock, she would literally just maybe sprain an ankle or get her dress dirty or something like that because there's a little ledge below it. So, Yeah, there are other areas on this same area that are literally a 1,000-foot drop. I don't ever put a bride right next to that because that would be a little scary. So, all right. So let's go to another set of portraits. I'm going to go to something on a beach. And so I want you to see what this looks like. This is a super fun shoot. We did this in Cancun just recently. But notice that it's fairly overcast, and as much as I like that overcast, I could have shot the entire thing just ambient light because it's so overcast. But the problem with overcast days is the light's still coming from the top, and when it does that, it creates shadows in the eyes, the eye sockets, and it's not quite as dramatic as having a little light. Just a pop of light somewhere will help any photograph really sing. And so in this case, what we have is we have my assistant here out there in the water lighting them with just a little bit of light. It doesn't take much. He's got that on a monopod and he's just holding a bare head bulb. We're not messing around with an umbrella or a softbox or anything like that. It's simply a bare head just to give them a little pop of light and fill in the shadows in their eyes and separate them a little bit from the background. And so you can see that he's a decent distance from them so that he's not in the shot, but he's over to the right and coming in from the right to the left. And that's what gives them that. See how that has that direction of light coming in? It almost looks like you're looking out and there's a little bit of a sunset coming in. Now, I don't know where the sun is. Sun's behind the clouds. It's non-existent. Can't find the sun. And so we get to create our direction of light. So whatever direction of light we want to create, we can, which is great because I'm able to make it look like this is sunrise and, you know, light's coming in and lighting them. But in actuality, it's not sunrise. It's, I don't know, it's like 10 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But the clouds have just blocked the sun. So I can create my own direction of light. This next shot is one of my favorites. In this case, now in the first one, we're lighting them from the side and from in front of them. So we're actually lighting them and filling in their eyes and stuff like that. But this one, the light coming forward, and let me sketch this out for you. So in this one, the light coming forward, here's the bride, and she's facing out to sea, right? I'm here taking my picture, and the light that's getting here, all of this light on the back of her is simply the ambient light from the sky behind me. So a very, very large soft box. Then what I'm using the light for, if you zoom in here and see, look at that. That light right there, that rim light that's separating her and making her hair dance like that, that light is right there. So you can see that he's got his light, it's a backlight. So he's off here going like that, creating that rim light across this side of her body and her hair. And so I've got this beautiful soft light coming forward, and then the backlight is what we're using the B1 head for. And it's just simply TTL, starts it up. Once we've got the TTL solution, then we turn it into manual and let it go from there. And remember, this flash is going to be 1 to 2 stops higher than the ambient exposure, which is what allows this to happen. You don't get that rim light if you try and match the light. If you try and make this backlight the same as the ambient light, you're not going to get any kind of an effect from it. So it's always got to be a little bit brighter than the forward light, which in this case is the ambient light. So anyway, that's a fun shot that we took, and I enjoyed that one a lot. Let's see. I'm going to answer a couple questions here. Are you shooting TTL or manual? Okay, so sometimes I'm shooting manual, sometimes I'm shooting TTL. In most cases, I start on TTL and let the TTL do the bulk of the work. Once I've got that, then I will increase or decrease a certain group of light, or I'll increase or decrease the flash compensation settings on my camera. And then once I've got a good set, I like the way it looks, then I'm going to flip it to manual, and then I'll shoot. And if for some reason during the shoot, and I'm shooting manually, and I want a different light to increase or decrease, at that point, instead of going back to TTL, I'll just increase or decrease the power directly from the air remote. So in that circumstance, when you're in your air remote, especially when you're only using one flash, these A, B, and C groups don't actually matter. So these are power settings based on comparison to each other. So it's for ratio purposes, not for power settings. But that's when you're in TTL. But once you're in manual mode, then when you increase or decrease the power settings on these, you will actually be physically increasing the power setting on whatever flash you're working with. So for instance, in this case, if I were to take the energy rating on A up by 1 stop or 2 stops, all of the lights behind me, which are currently on the A group, have just increased by 2 stops from whatever they happen to be. And so that's a very easy way for me to increase the light on a particular flash when I'm in manual mode and I want to adjust something a little bit. Okay, let's go to another set of photos here. Now this one I'm particularly happy with because now I get to show you. All these other ones I've had an assistant with me. So the assistant is running around, setting up lights, moving lights, holding a light on a monopod. And in this case, I'm doing everything on my own. So this is a wedding in south of London. I flew there. I did the whole wedding all by myself. No assistance whatsoever. And so I don't have anyone to hold my lights for me. I'm setting up the lights. I'm changing the lights. I'm doing everything myself. And this is where my B1 heads really shine because they're so portable. They're so easy to put together. And I don't have to have anybody changing anything for me. I can change it directly on the fly. So in this shot, we have the bride, and there's the church. And so I've first come in and I've got the shot, the ambient shot. So what I'm concerned about is the way that church looks and the way the grass looks. That's what I'm concerned about. So I get that shot and make sure that the exposure is correct, which was at ISO 200, 200th of a second at f5. Now, of course, I stated a 200th of a second because I know I'm going to do a flash. And I need that flash to be under a 200th of a second because at the current moment, I don't have the ability to do high-speed sync with a B1 head, although that's coming very soon. So in this case, let me show you where I put the flash then. Once I've got my ambient exposure, I'm going to add the flash. And there's my flash. Here's the trick. When you are on your own and you don't want to cart around a bunch of sandbags, literally, I don't have a lot. I have enough space for me to put a backpack on and carry my cameras on my hips with my spider holsters, so they're just kind of hanging off my hips. And then I've got a light. And if I were to put it on just a normal stand, if there was a slight breeze and I've got this umbrella on there, it's going to blow it over. And I don't want to carry around a 20 or 40 pound sandbag with me because I don't have an assistant to do that. My rule of thumb is only make my assistants carry sandbags. I don't want to carry sandbags. And so I am going to use a tripod instead. So you can see that I've got a nice Bogan tripod. It's nice widespread there. And then I've got the center post thrown up as high as it can go, and that puts them just over their heads. And that keeps the wind a slight wind from blowing. And now gale force winds are going to blow this thing over anyway. But in that case, I would just go bare head and then it would be fine. But using a tripod for your light is fantastic. Plus, later on, if I need to use a tripod, I've got it with me. So it's two things in one. Plus, I can't fit any of my stands in my normal travel bag, and so my tripod becomes like that small and can fit into my clothing bag. So that's the reason that I'm using a tripod. So you can see that I've got enough ambient light on this shot and on this shot that the front of the bride, or in this case the back of the bride, or in this case the bride and groom, that the ambient is taking care of them, generally speaking. And so what I want to do, and we're in England, so it's overcast and it's pretty drab lighting. So what I want to do is create a very soft direction of light. And that's why I'm using a white umbrella, because I want it to be a nice soft direction of light. I don't want it to overpower the basic ambient exposure too much, because then all of a sudden I look like I'm back in Phoenix with harsh light. So I love the soft light that's there in England. I just want to augment it a little bit. So I'm just adding just a tad bit of light. So when you look at that, then it's adding that light to them and giving them a little bit of a direction of light here. See that? And it's giving him a little bit of light. But the shadow is still forward for me. So I'm still getting a nice shadow forward. The same thing here. You can see that that light is coming in and just cresting her shoulder here. And that's great. And it's just adding a little bit of direction of light rather than a very harsh directional light. Now, we're going to move on to another shot that we shot of the bride. And interestingly enough, this tombstone that's in front of the bride is actually the groom's godfather's tombstone. So kind of an interesting church to be at with your godfather there in the cemetery. So kind of cool. Anyway, so you can see that I'm creating a nice directional light. And I'm short lighting her so the light's coming forward. And let me show you what happens here in this circumstance. I've got the light back off to the left-hand side of her, over to the left-hand side and slightly behind her so that it's coming kind of forward on her. And that's what creates that real nice shape on her. And then the same thing when I have the two of them together. I just have to make sure that he is not blocking the light. So notice that the light's still striking her, because it's coming around him. So you can't, it's lighting his back, it's lighting his arms, it's lighting her face. That's perfect. If he moved just slightly to the right, he would have blocked the light and she would have been in shadow. So you have to be careful about where they are. And then we did another shot of the two of them even closer. At this point, once you start getting a little closer and I move to the side a bit, then I end up with blocked light. And so at that point, we take the light and move it around. It used to be over here on this pathway coming this way, but now it's right close to me. It's just off to my left, and it's just filling them in with a little direction of light. So I want to show you another setup here with them that's a different way to look at things. And it kind of like almost the same as what we saw at the beach with the bride. So in this case, I am using the light behind her. I only have one light with me, so I'm not putting a lot of lights up. I'm just moving one light around. And so that light, you can see it over on the right-hand side, is just lighting and giving her a bit of a rim light. And so when I take the picture, you can see how it separates her from the building. And that building is if I didn't separate her from the building is a little bit close to her skin tone. You can see that brick right there is almost the same as her skin tone. So it's nice to have a rim light there. The ambient light is soft enough that I can get that nice forward light on her, but I need something to separate her, and so that's what that rim light's doing. So that's why it's right back there. Another circumstance, and this one's a really cool one. I love this shot. So that shot is much more dramatic. We increase the power of the light just a little bit more so that it overtakes the general scene. But I'm also taking the exposure down on the general scene. So instead of lighting it normally, like I am in, say, a circumstance like this where it's almost all ambient with a little bit of flash coming in from the left-hand side, instead of that, I'm lighting it much darker. We're in the shadow of the church. I'm darkening up the shadow, and then when I light them a little bit brighter, and I'll show you where the light is. The light's right behind this tree. So I've got the light right behind the tree, and it's lighting up right here, all of that. And then I'm lighting them. And of course, this was when I first set the light, so it was pointing down. And then I point it up a little bit so that we waste a little bit of that light so it's not quite hitting the ground constantly. And then that's what we get. as a result of that. So it's a matter of positioning my light to the right, and that's creating a direction of light. So many times people are constantly using their lights, the lights that they have on hand, and they think, oh, my first and primary objective with a light is to, softly light the face and get a beautiful portrait, and it's always the forward light, and that's oftentimes not the case. A lot of the times, especially in a wedding when you're running and gunning, the ambient exposure is great. And all you need to do is augment the light a little bit or create a direction of light that adds some mood to the light. And that can all be done with an assistant just running around with a monopod and a bare head, or a monopod and a beauty dish. Those things can be accomplished very easily. All right, we're going to go to another video really quickly. And what we're going to show you is some night shots in a forest that we did. So let's roll those. Let's roll the first video on that night shot, and let's let you see that. So you're just gonna step and go like that, and kind of look behind you. So you turn your shoulder, but you got to hold both your hands like you're like Little Red Riding Hood walking through the forest. Okay. All right. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Actually, look up a little bit. There you go. Yeah. Just like that, and a little bit to your right. Almost like you're looking at the moon. There you go. Yeah, just like that. That's beautiful. Pull it that way a little bit. There you go. And tilt it down a little bit even more. There you go. Okay. You can see I'm using the modeling light so that I can get focus on them.
Here we go.
It's too dark.
All right.
Then we turn
Look
it
where
off.
you're supposed to look. 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Beautiful.
Now in that shot, that shot is really important. Look at that shot on the screen really quickly. And you can see that I'm using the softbox over to the right-hand side and up above them, so the light's coming down on them and creating that really nice soft light. But in the background, I'm using a backlight because we have to separate them from the trees. It's way too dark back there. And so I'm going to separate them from the trees. Their hair needs to be separated. If you zoom in here, you can see that that's helping to separate out their hair, helps to separate out her hands, things like that. But it's also doing something else. When you're in a position where you have to have a backlight to separate someone, and you can use the light itself as a design element, go for it. So in this case, I'm trying to make it look like the sun is coming through the trees in the sunset, and it's kind of hitting them, so it feels a little bit like the sunset. There are other, let me go to another one where we did this. Hold on. Where is it? Hold on. Well, I'm not finding it. Oh, here it is, right here. So there's another instance where we did it. So we've got in this instance, we've got another softbox right off to the right-hand side, which is what's lighting them. And then that sun, or that big light form coming right over the horizon, is a B1 head. And it looks like it's, the setting sun or whatever, but it's the light. And so it allows us to rim light them, and it allows us to create some really interesting background element. And I love the way it fans out like that. I love the rays that come from it. And so that, I think, is a beautiful shot, and it wouldn't have been as good had we not put the image or the B1 head in it. Look at this one. So this one's good, and it's got the same rim light coming in and separating them from the background, and it's got the same softbox lighting them up. I like it, but it's nowhere near as cool and dramatic as that is, because we've included the actual light in the photograph. And so that's what we were doing here as well in our night forest shot with this photograph here. And let me show you one more night shot that we did, and that's this one. I love this shot here. This one is done with a beauty dish. So the beauty dish is what's lighting her, and it's lighting her from up top coming down, because we wanted it to look and feel a little bit like the moon as she's walking through the forest. Now in this case, we didn't use two lights. We were just running around with one light, and we were like, oh, come over here and let's take a shot. And so we did that with just one light, which works fine, but I would have preferred to have another rim light back behind her, separating her hair from the background. But I like it as it is. I think it's a beautiful shot. Let's see if we have a couple. Oh, we do. Do you ever use a light meter? Hardly ever. I have a light meter. It's in my bag. I've used it on occasion, but after a while you get used to what your power settings are going to be in any given situation. So you know, like I already know when I walk into a situation, this is going to be ISO 400 at 5.6 at about 200th of a second. And so I kind of know that. Take a shot, I'm correct on that. And then I say, I think that my flash power is going to be about X. Or with the TTL, I don't even have to think about it. And I'll just turn it on fire, and then I know what I've got. Now, the important thing to recognize, though, is that when I look at the photograph, I'm not judging the photograph by the LCD screen. I'm judging the photograph by the histogram. So I always have my RGB histogram on the back of my screen showing, so that I can judge the photograph by the histogram. The histogram tells me accurately what I have in the shot and if it's too dark or too light. The LCD screen is all over the place. You never really know if it's too bright or too dark if you just look at the LCD screen. It's totally can fool you because it has like 10 different brightness levels, and you could be a brightness level that's totally faking you out. So always look at the histogram to judge whether or not you have the brighter, or whether it's brighter or darker. So that's really important. Here's an interesting set of challenging night shots. So when you have a wedding at the Grand Canyon, if you happen to stay at the canyon edge when you're doing your dinner and your toasts and whatever, there's no light. It's dark, and there's no street lights, and there's no light whatsoever. And so for us, what we did is we actually lit up their reception with B1 heads. So we had B1 heads all over the place, and those became the lights for the. They were so grateful to have these lights shining because they could see to eat, because no one ever thinks, oh, I need to have some lights up there. And so we had the modeling lights lighting things up. In fact, these shots, this shot here and this next shot here, both of those were actually shot with the modeling lights. So I have my my air remote on my camera, just waiting to be used, and I just simply went into my group and I turned on the modeling lights. So I have all my modeling lights on, and I shoot with the modeling lights, and then I can turn them off when I want to. So I can turn them on and off. And in this case, I could turn off the A group and leave the B group on so that they had some light, but I didn't have my A ones on. So I can change, the groups as which one modeling light's going to be on, which one's going to be firing. All those types of things are possible with just my remote. So that's how we lit it up. Now let me show you how we lit the cake. So here's how we lit the cake. You can see that Eric is in the kind of the foreground. He's got a beauty dish, and he's lifting it up, and he's coming down on them with that general light source. So it feels like the light's coming from the sun, or it's coming from the moon, or it's coming from a roof, or whatever. And then on my tripod again, over in the back, I have a bare head coming in and separating them out from the background. So that's the lighting condition for the cake that we're shooting. And then if you look at the shots that we get from it, oh, here, this one's even better. She wants that cake. She is sold on that cake. She's just, I gotta have that cake. But it's beautiful light. Look at that rim light that's coming across her hair. It's lighting up the cake. And then Eric's light is coming in and giving her that nice soft light on the right-hand side of her face. It's giving her the cake a nice light. It's perfect lighting, even though we're in absolute pitch black. There was no way to see. In fact, we turned the modeling lights on so that we can actually focus. So you can do a lot of great lighting in challenging conditions. Here's one last one, and that is They were having dinner on a rooftop. There were no lights up there. It was all candlelight. So what we did is we set a softbox over to the left-hand side of their table, and we put a bear head right behind, off to the right-hand side of the frame, so that it separates them from the background. And that's our lighting condition for that. So they were actually very disappointed when we left, because we pulled out our lights, and so they lost all their ambient lighting, and all they had was the candlelight. So those are some really interesting wedding shots that we've done, challenging things, but all done with B1 heads, either bareheaded or very simple modifiers, very small modifiers, nothing really difficult to carry around. And as you see, in London, I was able to do the entire wedding myself, just with a tripod and one head, and then, of course, a shallow white umbrella. So those are the kind of things that I'm doing when I'm on a wedding. It's kind of hard to be able to understand what someone's doing on a wedding unless they allow you to creep in and see what you're doing on the wedding. So hopefully we were able to give you a sneak peek and let you get into a wedding and see what we do. So we are 3 minutes out before we end here. I'm going to see if there are any other questions that I can answer really quickly. One of the questions is, are these shots, and I don't know which shots we're talking about, but are they taking away from the wedding itself? And the answer is no, because we're doing them very quickly. It takes me about maybe 20 minutes to do a portrait session with a bride and groom. If you put in the family, it's another maybe 15 minutes. And so we take, a half hour away from a wedding to do portrait sessions, and then we put them back into documentary mode and we shoot. And I think that's really important. I think a wedding should be all about a wedding, but when we do portrait sessions, we want them to be done fast, quickly, easily, and that's when we do these kind of things. We pull in the lights, we get it done quickly, the TTL helps to get it done quickly, and then we move on and start documenting again. And of course, you can see even with like these challenging light situations in the dark, it's very easy to then light stuff that's really challenging to light. So the B1 heads are very helpful with that. Okay, we will have another webinar in November. The date for that is November 19th, I believe. Yep, November 19th. So tune in then for another webinar on lighting. We'll actually take you out on some model shoots, so you'll be able to see those and see how we're interacting with our models and really lighting things up and doing some, even 4-light shoots and stuff like that. So some really tricky lighting. So excited to show that to you. And if you have any further questions, please go to the blog at profoto.com/blog. And if you would like to connect with me, go to jaredplatt.com. You can fill in the request there to be on my newsletter, and you can get information that way. Or feel free to drop me a line. There's plenty of contact information there, so you can contact with me, ask me questions, and if I can, I'll get back to you on them. Until next time, though, watch for tweets on Profoto and Profoto USA, and we'll see you next month. Oh, and I also want to thank Tether Tools. I can't go without thanking Tether Tools and Triple Scoop Music. Triple Scoop provides all the music that's here today on the intro and the outro, and Tether Tools provides us with all the things that hold up our laptops and our cameras and all that kind of stuff. So those are critical. So thank you, Tether Tools. Thank you, Triple Scoop, and above all, thank you to Profoto for providing the opportunity to teach this, for the free education, the blog, all of that stuff. They're a great resource. You can spend a lot of time on their blog just learning. So we'll see you next month, and until then, feel free to contact me at jaredplatt.com.
Welcome to the 21st century.